This is the Conscious Productivity Podcast, and I'm your host, Stephanie Woodward. This is where we're going to talk about your ambition and your drive and how to honor your ambition and drive without losing yourself in the hustle. It's about making the shift from unconscious productivity to conscious productivity. I am thrilled that you're here, and let's jump right in to today's episode. Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Productivity Podcast, or welcome back to the Conscious Productivity Podcast, whether you're new here or whether you're returning. Welcome. This is the space where we talk about getting things done, but getting them done in a way that actually feels good, that builds relationship, that creates the kind of workplaces and the kind of work that is actually good for our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, that actually feels good to make a contribution. So this is the space for those who really connect and healthily identify with their work and want to do a great job and do it in a way that feels meaningful and impactful. So welcome. If you're here, you now know the space that you are in. And today, I want to talk about something that is really important on the relationship side of leadership. And that is the corporate offsite or the team offsite. Maybe you've been on an offsite before with your team. And maybe you haven't. Companies will sometimes spend a small fortune taking their teams offsite. And I mean, like, there can be real dollars attached to this. We know this. If you've ever planned an offsite for your team or for your organization, between venues, catering, activities, hotels, facilitators, travel, the whole thing, it adds up really, really quickly. And often I will ask leaders if they come and talk to me about it. I'll say, how did your last offsite go? Tell me about it. I want to learn more about what you did when you were offsite. And sometimes they'll say, you know what? It was great. We had such a good time. Everybody really, really needed that offsite. And then I'm going to ask, okay, so what changed as a result? What's different at work now as a result of that offsite? I will sometimes get a pause, or I'll hear a pause. There will be a pause that happens because usually there's some version of, people seem to be a bit happier the next week. We did some team building. There were some really good conversations. That's all great. I love to hear that. And then they'll go a little bit further and say, yeah, it was fine. But if I'm being really honest, nothing really changed. Like, we're back into those same habits now that we're back in the office. So this happens more often and more commonly than we might like to think. And for leaders that are investing a lot of money in their offsites, that can hurt to hear that, because you think, gosh, we're investing this money. We want this to be something impactful. Here's the truth. Most offsites are not failing because they were bad days, or people weren't having fun, or they weren't enjoying it, or you didn't create a really memorable experience. They'll fail because sometimes there isn't intentionality behind it. What is the outcome that we want to have for the team? What is the change that we want to see, the shift that we want to see as a result of this time of coming together? A great day on its own is not a great offsite. And I know that's hard to hear, but that's the reframe I want you to really take in today. An offsite isn't just a fun day. It's actually a design, and it's a really intentional design. Now, as a facilitator, I absolutely love, full disclosure, I love designing offsites. This is something I love to do. I get to go a lot deeper with the teams I work with when we go offsite together. So I'm really passionate about this topic. And so I want to let you in on some of the secrets of running a great offsite and what it means to design one really intentionally. So I'm going to walk you through 5 things that I think really make an offsite stick. The difference between a nice, memorable day and a real shift in how the team works, the team approaches its work, or how team members approach one another. We're going to talk about the different kinds of offsites and the intentionality behind each one, and then what can actually make them successful. So this will be really useful, I think, whether you are thinking of running one for your team, whether you're deciding whether you want to invest in one with an external facilitator, or whether you're just making sense of why the last one that you did maybe felt a little off or didn't quite have the impact that you were hoping for. So let's dive in to today's episode. Before we get into the specifics of the different kinds of offsites, before we even get into the 5 factors that really make an offsite successful, I want to talk about why this conversation matters so much right now. And more so than it did, even 5, 6, 10 years ago. A lot has changed, as we know, about how teams work. Most of us, we recognize that. We know that we're working more remote, we're working more hybrid. But time just passes by so quickly, it can be easy to forget those olden days of being in offices together 5 days a week. The office was never just a location. Yes, there are the frustrations. I know the commute for those of you that are saving time on a commute, it can feel amazing to not have to go into an office every day, 5 days a week. I recognize that, but I want you to think about the hub that the office once was. It was a hub for informal, spontaneous learning, the kind of learning that builds confidence. You could do a quick check-in, a quick confidence booster. It can accelerate development. I suddenly can get a little bit of just-in-time mentorship from someone who's just down the hall. It can shape your judgment over time because you are able to observe people in a different way. You're able to build relationships in a different way. There's the hallway conversation. There's watching a senior leader handle a really hard moment and what they do about it and what happens right afterwards. You can kind of track their emotional journey and how they handle something. That debrief on the drive home from a client meeting, all of these things. Even that overheard exchange between two people who kind of knew what they were doing, and you saw two people really working through something in a really skillful way, you pick up on that. So all of this informal learning that was happening, it's how many of us learn to be leaders by observing, by taking it in, by shadowing people. From that proximity. And so that is something that can feel really, really hard to recreate. And this is something I talk to a lot of the leaders that I work with about. When that in-office dissolved, when remote and hybrid really became the norm, those organic learning structures really dissolved with them. It's hard to replace. It's not impossible, but it's really hard to replace informal conversations. It's never going to be the same to ping someone on Teams or ping someone in the chat as it is to just happen to walk by their office and say, "Hey, I got a quick question for you." It's very, very different. Not impossible, but different. Our digital tools have certainly expanded our reach across distance, so we can connect with someone who may have been across the country that we only saw once a year. It's wonderful now with our digital tools. We can connect with those team members more often, but it doesn't recreate that kind of in-person development that can happen and that observation that can happen. So do not worry. This is not a push for return to work and return to office. That's not where I'm going with this episode. What I really want to highlight is we need to come up with ways of replacing what has been dissolved. And it's going to look different now than it did before. And offsite, when you have dedicated time with a team and get them out of their normal environment and bring them all together in person, is a great way to create some spontaneous learning. And to bring that kind of observational leadership dynamic back to people who may not be getting it in their day-to-day environment. So part of the reason why I wanted to bring that up, because we're talking about offsites today. We're also leading through a time of enormous pressure and change. What AI is doing to our workplaces right now and what is changing for us right now, there is legislative change. There is constant restructuring happening right now. Teams have less, I was going to say less slack, but they might be using the program Slack. There's less room in the system right now. Most people are wearing, 3 to 4 different hats. People are handling more roles than one, more roles than their own. There's so much going on. And so those informal moments of just connection and relaxation or just cracking a joke with a team member or walking to the local coffee house to pick up a coffee, that's very different than being on a Zoom call and drinking coffee together. So those moments of connection, of sense making, of informal mentoring, those aren't able to happen as easily either. Just those natural moments of celebration and relaxation with your team members. This is all that relationship layer. Because here's what I keep noticing. We've gotten really efficient at doing our work digitally, but we're getting really disconnected from each other in the process. And the more we kind of normalize doing isolated work at home, the more we're going to lose this relationship layer. And anybody that works really closely with me knows how important I believe that relationship side of the leadership equation to be. We're always managing work and getting work done, but that experience of how it gets done, that relationship piece is so, so important. And often it's the friction between team members or it's those interpersonal dynamics or that lack of real collaboration that causes some of the biggest tension and anxiety at work. If you have not listened to the previous episode, I think it was 2 episodes ago, I talked about the microclimate at work. That was a lot about the team interpersonal dynamics. Have a listen to that one. Offsites can really support climate work on your team. So the two pieces would go together really, really well. So I really want to make a case for the relationship layer and how we can do this. Again, not advocating that we go back in office 5 days a week. That's not the answer to this. But how can you really design your together time, your offsite time, get people out of their environment, get people together in person, humans connecting with humans in an environment with real intentionality. That's the real key of an offsite. So I hope I've made the case that relationship layer isn't optional. That relationship layer, making sure people are connected and understand one another and work well together and are able to connect in the ways that they need and want to, that's what's actually going to make hybrid and remote work even better when we are finding the space to create those really valuable connections. When teams have really strong relationships, hybrid becomes really much easier, right? People give each other the benefit of the doubt more often. They pick up the phone instead of writing a long defensive email. They can have hard conversations without falling apart. And I'll say, they sometimes even become less hard. You wouldn't necessarily categorize them as a hard conversation because instead of it feeling like I'm having a conversation with a stranger, it's like, oh, I'm having a conversation with that person that I've spent time with. I know them. We chatted about, something that was really important to us at that offsite that we went to, or when we had that in-person coffee, we had that conversation that I really remember. I see them as a person. I see them as a fellow human. That makes those conversations happen way more easily, and it feels less hard to have an honest conversation. When you don't have that kind of strong relationship base, that's when work becomes a heck of a lot more exhausting because you're guessing at everyone else and their intentions, and you're guessing at the relationship, you're guessing at all of that all the time. So can we all agree that an offsite done right can be one of those few chances that we have to intentionally build these things all at once? We can give some informal learning opportunity. We can problem solve together. We can have some fun together. We can build relationship together. So I am here to say that I think the offsite is one of the most important leadership investments you can make. And because of that, because it's a big investment, you really want to be thinking about why you're doing it. So let's move into that next. What kinds of offsites exist and what will make them really, really impactful? So here's the mindset shift I want to suggest here. Most offsites are treated as a day, right? A fun day. You book a venue, you plan some activities, you show up, you do the day, you go home, you go back to whatever your hybrid work environment looks like. And most of the time, when leaders think they're planning an offsite, what they think of is, oh, I'm planning a day. I'm planning a fun day. I'm planning a day with a lot of activities. But here's the thing. That day, planning a day is kind of the easy part. And I don't want to diminish this. It is a lot of work to actually book a room and make the catering happen. But that part, you can follow a checklist. And as long as you check all those items off the checklist, you'll get the logistics, you'll get a room. You can choose a game to play together. What really makes an offsite stick is everything that's going on around the day. Why are we having this day in the first place? How have we come together to prepare for this day? What comes before we get together for this day? And what comes after this day? Who is actually holding the room, holding the space? And what is it that we're actually trying to shift or change? Those are the bigger questions that you really want to be thinking about. You can find a venue, trust me. You can find food that accommodates all the food preferences. You can do all those things. That will sort itself out. But the intentionality of why you're doing this day and what you want to see change, that's the work that you need to be putting into it. There needs to be intention behind your day. I don't want you falling into the trap of just defaulting to a fun in the moment trap. And this happens all the time, where activities that feel great in the room, but they really mean nothing by Tuesday. This would be things like the escape room, nothing against escape rooms, the improv workshop, the really nice dinner, the wine tasting, the really cool venue. I want to be really careful here. I have nothing against having fun. So I don't want you to think, geez, Stephanie's a real killer of joy and really doesn't like to have fun. None of these things are bad. Fun is not the enemy. But when you are planning a really expensive offsite for your team, I want you to be able to draw a line between what we're doing on that day and how that activity is going to contribute to how your team collaborates, or how they decide things, or how they communicate with one another, or how they approach one another, or that we've actually solved something that's getting in the way of us doing really great work. If you're just building out fun activities, that's entertainment, right? That's going to be entertaining. Sometimes we need entertainment, but that's not development. And I definitely don't want you to give up having fun get-togethers. Absolutely put it in the budget that you're going to go do an escape room in the year. Have it in the budget that you're going to have some team dinners and you're going to go out together and have these really great experiences together. So absolutely budget for those. But remember, those are fun activities for you to let off steam together or just have some informal bonding together. When you're going to invest in an offsite, you can add layers of that in, but that's not the whole day. We're not just looking for entertainment. I don't want you to confuse entertainment and development, or genuine team building and entertainment, or solving a real challenge or obstacle together versus entertainment. They can look really similar in the moment, entertainment and development, but they can feel very different by the time you get into the office. So there is one really practical thing I want to name before we get into the 5 factors that make an offsite really, really successful. And this is the different kinds of offsites. And so I really jot these down if you're sitting next to a notebook. If you're someone who's going to be planning an offsite or is thinking of an offsite, in my mind, there are 3 different kinds. Okay, 3 different kinds of offsites, and they all serve very different purposes. We have thinking, connection, and recovery. So the first one, a thinking offsite, is when you have a real challenge to work through. So this could be a strategy shift. We all know the strategic offsite where you go off and you plan strategy together. So strategy shift, a big decision, a hard problem that the team hasn't cracked yet, an opportunity that you need to dissect together. You need to size up that opportunity and decide what you're going to do. Maybe a service delivery model change. Maybe there's a real threat in your industry or your environment, and you need to come together, put your big brains together to figure out what to do next about it. You need protected focus time and structured design time to actually crack the code on this. Offsites are wonderful for this, getting out of the office environment, getting away from that back-to-back meeting calendar and actually saying, we are clearing our calendars for 2 days, 3 days, 1 day, whatever that is, to go away and actually put intentional focus on this problem, this challenge, this thinking something that we need. That's a thinking offsite. And that requires a very specific design, some prep materials, maybe some pre-conversation. So a thinking offsite is one kind. A connection offsite can be when the team is a bit out of sync with each other, or trust is thin, or maybe there's tension on the team that nobody's really naming, but you can feel it. Maybe you've got a lot of new team members and you're looking to integrate them. Or you've been remote for so long that you don't actually know each other as humans anymore. You can't remember the last time you got together. Or just wanting to refamiliarize yourselves with one another, how you want to work together. What are some of the norms that you want to bring together? How do you want to collaborate together? These are all connection conversations, and this would be a connection offsite. Very, very different than a thinking offsite. You can have elements of connection. So you can bring into a thinking offsite, you could bring in some of those entertainment items, a really nice dinner. So when you have had a big strategic day all day, it can be really great to enjoy a really nice dinner together. Something that can really feel a lot more fun and lower stakes. That's great. So pair the fun after you've done that big thinking day. A connection offsite is where we're doing the thinking and the planning around the actual relationship. It's not just informal coffees together. We're really designing for how do we rebuild or strengthen or build up the trust on this team? How do we make our relationships even stronger? How do we understand each other at a deeper level so that we can minimize the unhealthy friction that's going on in the team and create the space to have good creative tension and really great, powerful conversations? That's built through trust and through relationship with one another. So that would be a connection offsite. Finally, there's a recovery offsite. Now, this is one where you might have a little more entertainment and a little more fun. And so you can deliberately design for this as well. I just want you to be intentional about it. So a recovery offsite is what I call a recovery offsite would be when the team has gone through something hard. Maybe it's been a really intense business quarter or a really big launch or a rough season or just a lot of uncertainty or a lot of change. And they actually need restoration. They need space. They need rest. They need celebration. They need time to metabolize what's happened. Maybe they've had a really successful quarter. Maybe there's been a lot that we're celebrating together. But before they get pushed into the next thing, before they start turning their attention to the next big project, the next big strategic planning session, it's like, let's just take a moment to recover, to restore, to celebrate. That's when you might bring in a lot more kind of fun activities, more of that entertainment, but you make that really deliberate. You actually say to people, we're going offsite to actually just forget about work and have a really good time together and just recover, because We've just had such success. We've just come off of a really successful or really difficult time. So that's the intentionality of the offsite. Okay. What I don't want you doing is thinking that a recovery offsite, a lot of fun, is actually going to serve your thinking or your connection goals. They're very, very different things. Okay. So I want you to know which one you are planning, know which one you're booking, because that just knowing the intentionality, which of these three you're looking to prioritize, is going to help you design the entire thing. Okay. So that's item number one in planning your offsite. Decide what kind of offsite you're going to have. So now let's go into the top 5 factors. You know me and my top 5 lists. Let's look at the top 5 factors that make an offsite actually work. Okay, so I'm going to give you my top 5 list. The 5 things that I see that will separate offsites that actually get change going, or they change something, from offsites that were a really nice memory, a fun time, but didn't necessarily move the needle. And when you're making, I've said this before, when you're making an investment, we want to see some ROI on the investment. So item number 1, get clear on what kind of depth you actually need in your offsite. So this is the one we just talked about. Is it thinking? Is it connection? Is it recovery? I want to go a little bit deeper here. It's not enough to just say we need connection. You have to know what connection means for this team, for your team right now. Is it that people are new to each other? Is it that we've had an event that's maybe broken some trust between people? Is it that people are being polite to each other's faces, but they're really frustrated behind each other's backs? Is there something going on in the system that is creating some relationship strain? The clearer you are on what you're trying to change, the more the day can deliver, right? Most teams will, book kind of for the vibe they want. We need to get out of the office and reconnect, but then they wonder why the day was fun, but nothing shifted. Reconnect is a bit of a feeling, but it's not helping you understand, what do I need to design for in the day? What do I need to really create either questions or design around or activities around that's going to help us move the needle on how it is that we want to reconnect. So like I said, I do a lot of offsites and I do this with teams. This is where I really start with a client. I really want to understand, what's the purpose of this? Why do you want to do this? What is having you feel like you want to make this investment and go offsite? Because this is going to help us understand what's going to create the best design for the day or for the 2 days or up to 3 days that you're taking your team offsite. We really want to have a deep conversation about that. I custom design everything I do for the clients I work with, because no 2 teams are the same. And you really can't design the right day until you've really named the dynamics that are going on with the team, the challenge that needs to get solved, or whether the team is actually pretty burnt out and needs that recovery time before they can really jump into relationship or strategy work, right? That's gonna dictate the purpose of your offsite. Number 2, the real work happens before the offsite, not on the actual day. So not only, yes, there's all the planning. You want to make sure you've figured out all of your logistics. You want to think about all of the details. Absolutely. You want to decide, like we just said, what kind of offsite you're going to have. But how do you get the momentum going? This is really important. When you're going to invest and take the team offsite, if they're kind of in their world of work and suddenly it's like, oh, right, tomorrow's the offsite. I guess I'm heading off to that town, or I'm getting on the plane, or I'm getting on the bus, or I'm getting in the car and I'm driving off to this offsite. And it can feel very jarring to go from your day-to-day work to suddenly I'm going to the offsite, and I'm expected to do thinking work, connection work, or to step into some really great entertainment. So how are you starting to build momentum for the offsite before you actually get to the offsite? So for example, if it's a thinking offsite, how are you priming the pump for people to start thinking strategy? There can be great ways of doing teasers for that. Maybe some light pre-reads for things, or just planting some really great questions, just getting people thinking about it, getting excited about it. Same thing with connection. I'll often do work. I certainly, especially as an external facilitator, this would be different if you are planning from an internal perspective, but I'm always going to want to meet the team members beforehand. As an external facilitator, I don't want them all meeting me on the first day of the offsite, because I have an established relationship with them. So there's meaningful relationship work that can happen, and certain things you can do to prime the pump ahead of time before you actually show up in the room. And then you're really going to get the most out of the few days together, because you've started in advance. if you show up on the day without any kind of context, and you just have a template that you're going to work from, it's not going to land in the same way. The activities are going to feel way more generic. The conversations aren't going to be as rich. People aren't necessarily going to say the real thing that needs to be said. You want to really understand the lay of the land and spend the time doing some pre-work, some pre-conversations, and some pre-planning, pre-relationship build, excitement, momentum before you actually get in the room. And it is going to look different. So there's no one size fits all kind of pre-work or pre-activities. It looks different for every single kind of offsite, every single team. But what I want you to remember here is think about that. Once you've decided here's what we're doing and here's where we're going to do it, now what can we do beforehand to really set this up for success? And how can we get people looking forward to it and doing maybe some of that emotional or mental prep work they need to do before we get there? Number 3, I want you to design for transfer, not entertainment. And this is something I will always support when I'm designing these offsites. Yes, team, when you've done a day with me at night, absolutely, I want you to go and have the dinner. I want you to go get a spa treatment, do whatever, go on the trails if the site has beautiful trails that you can go on, campfire site, like go have the bonfire, do the things. We absolutely want to have some downtime, some entertainment. But if you are doing a thinking or a connection offsite, every activity you put into that offsite during that day should change something back at work. That's the test that I'm always thinking about. Not, is this fun? Yes, I want people to enjoy it. Ideally, I want it to make use of the facilities. I want it to be interactive. I want it to feel different than, just having a regular meeting at the office. So there will be a component that is interactive, but it's not just about it being fun. Can I draw a line from this activity to how the team collaborates or how the team decides or the strategy that we're looking to launch next quarter? You want to be able to draw a line between the intention that you've set and the activities that you're planning. If you can't draw the line, cut the activity, even if it's fun, even if you think it's really cool. So the number of times I've seen people bring in a particular game and everyone in the moment is like, oh, this is so much fun. I'm having so much fun in this game. And the game, says, hey, we're doing team building here. We're doing collaboration, but they're collaborating around something that is completely unrelated to the business, to the team, to the relationships. It really does feel good because it's safe in the moment. It's safe to, not that I'm not going to hate on rope swings here, but doing a rope exercise can feel really great in the moment. Sometimes there's some genuine transfer to the workplace, but we don't want to be doing that all day. I think you see where I'm going here. In the moment, it can feel fun. It can feel safe, as a safe way to collaborate. Yeah, we're talking about ropes. How is that conversation about the ropes and climbing the ropes? Is that actually going to transfer to the conversation that those two people need to have next week about that conflict they've been having? You want to be able to draw that connection. So whenever you're thinking about these activities, I want you to imagine yourself 2 weeks after the offsite. Someone is in a hard meeting where they need to speak up. 2 colleagues on your team are in a disagreement that they need to work through, or a new person is trying to figure out how the team is making decisions. Is there anything that you did at the offsite that is going to show up in that moment? I really want there to be a practical link that you can make. If yes, you've got a good design. If no, you've built an event. It may be entertaining, but don't expect that offsite to give you developmental ROI when you're back at the office. You're not going to shift things really materially unless you can make that direct line. Okay. And that this is a bit of a controversial statement. I might have people that really push back on me with this and say, no, Stephanie, we want a full day of rope swings. And again, nothing against rope swings. They can be really fun, and physically it can be a great way to get energy out. There's a time and a place for them. But don't expect, if we get through a difficult climb on the rope swing together, we're going to be really able to work through something at work next week. Those two things don't necessarily correlate. Now, number 4, I want you to give people their own entry point. So never force vulnerability. So this might seem like an odd one for a facilitator to say, because you're probably used to facilitators coming in and saying, let's get everybody to share, let's do this. And anybody that's worked with me knows I do get people sharing. I never will force people to share beyond their comfort level. So it's really important when you are framing the activities, when you're framing the design, am I creating enough safety in this that people can choose their level of vulnerability? A lot of well-intentioned offsites go sideways here. Nobody does their best thinking or their best connecting or their most honest work when they've been put fully on the spot about something that they're either really not expecting, that is really personal, or that feels really vulnerable. So if you say, I want you to go around and tell me what your childhood was like. This is just an example. I'm not sure anyone these days would offer that up in an offsite space, but sharing something, unless you have deliberately designed for that, unless you, this could be true depending on your industry, depending on your work, that question might make sense. People might expect it. But if you are in a corporate environment selling widgets and suddenly you're asking people to go into the depths of their childhood without contracting for that, without doing the groundwork for that, that's going to be that can be very off-putting for people, and it can actually do the opposite. And instead of bonding people, it can actually make people feel more distant from the group. So you want to be really careful about what kinds of activities you're running and how you're creating safety for people and letting people choose how they want to show up. This can even, you might think that would be for a connection offsite, but even in a thinking offsite, some people need processing time. And so this is where the pre-work can really help, where you could say, here's what we're looking to do while we're offsite. Here's what I want you thinking about. Here are the questions I want you to start marinating with before we go away. The processes are on your team, they're going to give you a big exhale because they're going to feel really safe because they know what's expected of them. They can process that. They can give it some thinking time before they get there rather than dumping that on people in the moment. That can actually create a great amount of stress and anxiety. So the more prep work you can do ahead of time, even for a thinking retreat, putting parameters around, even if you're doing a recovery retreat, right? A restoration retreat where it's all about celebration and fun. Not everything is fun for all people. And sometimes fun can be taken too far. Like, what parameters do you want to put around that? How are you going to design things for that kind of emotional safety or physical safety that's going on in those offsites? So that's all something to think about. Allowing people to choose their level of vulnerability and giving them a safe space to show up at their best. That's what we're really looking to design for as well. Safety, that psychological safety, that emotional safety, that mental safety, it doesn't happen just because you're in a beautiful venue. It doesn't just happen because you ask the question in a really nice way. You have to really design for that and help prepare people for the experience. And finally, number 5, follow through after the day. So at an offsite, I love commitments. I love, what are we going to do with this information? Now let's make this really tangible. We've just spent this 2 days together. What are we going to do differently as a result of this? What are our key takeaways? What are our insights? You have to make those commitments, connect those dots in the moment while it's all fresh, while the energy is still high, and then figure out a way you're going to follow up and follow through on those commitments. Even a fantastic day that's had really great design, it can quickly evaporate. You want to make sure that you have a way of coming back to this and bringing your group back to this, even when you're a month out from the event, from the experience, because everyone, you come back from 2 days off work, let's be honest, you come back to, if you've really blocked your calendar for those 2 days, you're going to come back to a lot of emails. Everyone's going to come back to that full inbox, the urgent work that they need, their team members didn't bother them for 2 days. And now suddenly they're like, I've got so many questions for you. That can mean that the insights from those days away suddenly fade. Those commitments, unless you come back to them later, they can easily get abandoned or forgotten, not through any ill intention, but just because we come back to a lot of busy work when we get back in. So you want to make sure you have a follow through plan from everything you're doing. How are we now going to come back to this when we come back from this really great event? I hope you are having some good takeaways here. We've talked about the 3 different kinds of retreats and really deciding what one you want. We've talked about 5 elements that make retreats really great. So if you are planning an upcoming offsite, really think about these. I hope this has been really helpful. And it is a lot of work. So I do want to be honest about that. So if you've got someone internally who books these, really give them a good pat on the back and say, thank you so much. If they design these really well, it is a big lift to do this. It is a lot of work to do this. And also, if you think you can plan this off the side of your desk, it may not land the way you think it will. So do not hesitate in your budget to really look into getting some external support, get an external facilitator. Sometimes it's great to bring someone else in so that you as the leader can kind of exhale and relax and you can actually enjoy the experience with your team. That's where having someone from the outside can really help and support you with this work. And they can be the one to think about that design. As I've mentioned, I love doing offsites and retreats with teams. If you are looking to book one, even if you just want to chat through your thought process, chat through your design for one, reach out, book a discovery call. Let's talk through it. You can book a discovery call over at agencytochange.com. You can also check out, I've got some new language over on the website around retreat experiences and offsite experiences, and even intensive one-on-one coaching offsites, where if you are going through a big promotion right now or you're going through a big transition as a leader, sometimes having a dedicated day, a one-on-one offsite between you and me, we go offsite. All you get to do is focus on yourself and your leadership agenda and what you want to talk about. Getting out of your environment and having someone with you to really go deep on a topic can be so helpful. So head on over to agencytochange.com, check out what's there, call me, reach out for a discovery call if you want to talk through your upcoming offsite. I would love nothing more than to bounce ideas with you or support you in actually doing some facilitation for your upcoming event. Take care. It has been wonderful going through this with you today. Here's to more conscious work, more conscious workplaces, and more conscious offsites. I'll see you in the next episode.